Hello, beautiful souls. Thank you so very much for dropping by this video. To anyone who's new to this channel, a very warm welcome. This channel is about learning to distinguish between actual non-duality and fake non-duality, often called Neo-Advaita, and then how to break free from Neo-Advaita. It's actually very, very harmful and dangerous. So this is part of a dialogue I'm having with someone by email, and then every now and then I make a video about one of the things we're talking about. And one of the things that currently came up in that dialogue is I mentioned qualified non-duality, and this person said, "Oh my gosh, I don't want anything to do with non-duality in essence." And so they said, maybe I don't know if qualified non-duality would really work for me. So I understand. That's how I feel about. I don't want anything to do with anything, even traditional non-duality for now. So first, I just want to share briefly what is qualified non-duality. The beautiful thing is that qualified non-duality is night and day from non-duality. The essence of qualified non-duality, well, first, so the essence of non-duality is there's no separation between the divine, between creator and creation, right? Like there's all this stuff all around me. And dualism, well, let's start with dualism. Dualism is what most religions are. There's like God is up there, created you and me and all this stuff, and is completely separate from all of this, like far and away. That's duality. That's dualism. That's hardcore dualism. That's the religion I was raised in. Like God's in heaven, I'm here on earth. And there's this huge gap between us that will never be bridged. I'll never be from that perspective. Like maybe I'll be a little closer when I die and go to heaven, but God will still be. Then there's non-duality, which is the next thing I explored. I was not exploring non-duality, I was exploring neo-non-duality. But neo-non-duality says that in essence, there's no separation. Creator and creation are truly one and the same. And qualified, which is very, very, one of the reasons Neo-Advaita is so harmful is because non-duality leads a person to not be able to function unless it's properly taught. You won't know how to, it takes away your capacity to navigate this world. I experienced it, and many people experienced it that I've spoken to. One person wrote me a letter and said at a certain point, all they could do was sit on their couch and go get food. Like that was their life, because they just, Neo-Advaita, badly taught non-duality. It takes away your compass for how to navigate life, how to live life. That's one of the reasons non-duality, Neo-Advaita is so dangerous. Is it literally takes away your ability to function if you take it seriously. If you just kind of like, watch a Neo-Advaita video every now and then, it's probably not a big deal. So that's non-duality and a little bit of why Neo-Advaita is so dangerous. And then there's qualified non-duality. Qualified non-duality in essence says this: creator and creation are simultaneously distinct. Like there's something that made everything, that made me and made you, made, this lamp over here and that ceiling. And the creator is intimately connected to, yet distinct. Both. It's a both and. Another way to say it is Creator and creation are intimately close, closer than close, yet distinct. So people who practice qualified non-duality practice worship of the Creator, while simultaneously practicing the philosophical inquiry into recognizing how close the Creator is. That there's, on the one hand, there's like, I didn't create me, and that which created me is all around me and even inside of me. I'm not it, yet I'm intimately and closely related to it. That's why I started off by saying in qualified non-duality, there's considered to be oneness. A beautiful expression of this was an Indian saint who said, simultaneous oneness, yet differentiation. That's a big word. Oneness, yet distinctness. So the repercussions of this are that in qualified non-duality, it's about being in relationship to the Creator. Non-duality, the idea of relationship becomes meaningless, because how can you have relationship implies two. To have a relationship, there has to be some distinction. But in qualified non-duality, there is that distinction, or that there's the understanding that there is a distinction. And so relationship is the name of the game of loving the divine and being in service to the divine. And ultimately, surrender, which I've talked about many times on this channel, is considered a key part of the path. When I first found out about qualified, and I'm just going to briefly say there are multiple versions of qualified non-duality. There's literally 4 or 5 different schools of it in Indian philosophy, and I'm not going to go into all the differences here. But here's the other, and perhaps the most important piece, is that in qualified non-duality, the thing we call soul, individuality, is completely honored. In fact, this is maybe the most important part for helping to recover from Neo-Advaita, is that the uniqueness that I am, meaning the unique qualities that I think of as myself. In Advaita, there's some focus on completely transcending or letting go, or even denying that there is anything unique about me or you or anyone. In qualified non-duality, it's considered an eternal. And so the metaphor in Advaita Vedanta is, in non-duality, is of a river returning to the ocean and melting into the ocean to where the river in essence disappears. Qualified non-duality has a completely different, you could say, story of the spiritual journey. In Advaita, it's like, okay, you're a river, here's the ocean, you find your way back into the ocean, you melt into the ocean, and you're gone. Qualified non-duality would say something more along like this, is there's an ocean, and there is a stream moving you towards the ocean, but you are like a mini iceberg. And as you get closer and closer to the ocean, maybe you melt a little bit, but you'll never melt completely. And then you make it to the ocean, and maybe you even go under the water so that you're intimately surrounded and held by the divine. But what you are will never be completely The individuality that you are will never be completely destroyed or taken away. And after this intimate connection or communion with the ocean, the journey continues. Just maybe has a little different flavor to it now that attachment and suffering has been let go of, but there's then an eternal relationship with the divine. So, as you can see, it's night and day. And then how you so that's kind of the metaphysical. That's the metaphysical vision that's presented. But then how you live your life is also then radically different. How you live your life then is cultivating a relationship with that which made us, offering gratitude and thanks for our very existence, and asking yourself, how can I be of service? How can I serve creation? How can I participate in creation in a way that's harmonious? How can I become a better person so that I can better serve my Creator and my Creator's creation? All the while cultivating the recognition that the divine is closer than close. Because even those words, how can I serve my Creator and creation, can kind of push God, can seem to push infinite source away. So simultaneously, there's the cultivation and the recognition that this creation is part of. In fact, that's another beautiful component. This creation is seen as part of the divine. You could say the body of God. The body of God. That's a very different view of creation. In Advaita Vedanta, creation is often said to be an illusion. And I would say it's very common in Neo-Advaita. So it's a completely different way of life and a completely different way of looking at life itself and looking at creation and looking at ourselves, because in that view, we're part of creation. In this view, you and I are actually a part of God. That can be a little complex to think about because the mind tends to like either ors. But to have this view of like all of creation is part of God, and yet that which made all of it is, while intimately connected to, is somehow mysteriously above creation. It's a very different view. It's a very different view that leads to a related yet different path, a different way of life, a different way of thinking, and a different view of ourselves and the meaning of life. When I found qualified non-duality, I was completely blown away. It spoke to me so deeply. Answered so many of my questions, and it just feels so much more psychologically healthy. You know, ultimately, Advaita Vedanta is about renouncing the world. And that's good, great if you're a monk or a nun. But for those of us who aren't, and then of course, all of us have been taught Advaita Vedanta, have been taught non-duality incorrectly to the point where it isn't even non-duality. It's something very twisted and distorted. But even correctly taught non-duality is renunciate. it devalues the world in many ways and devalues our individuality. So I personally found it, even classical, authentic non-duality, I found it unhealthy and not the path for me. So thank you so very much for dropping by. And I invite you to take a peek on Wikipedia under the word Vedanta. And what you'll see is, if you scroll down to overviews of the main schools of Vedanta, that there's many different schools of Vedanta, and Advaita is just one of many. Thank you so very much. Have a blessed day.